Seasmoke Origins, Laenor Velaryon's beautiful and stealthy dragon explored. Ah, dragons. Can't help loving them, can't help being absolutely terrified if they catch even an inkling of you being a threat. Historically, most dragon riders have been from either one of the 40 dragon lord families of Old Valyria or House Targaryen, the inheritors of their legacy. But there was a sliver in time when another house managed to get their hands on not one, but 2 dragons, though the Targaryens didn't exactly gift them these mighty beasts. From 101 AC to 130 AC, House Velaryon had the honor of counting themselves amongst the Dragon Lords for nearly 3 decades, and one of these dragons would truly embody their heritage as exceptional seafarers. Seasmoke is the only known dragon to have had riders that are exclusively non-Targaryen during his entire lifetime, and after House of the Dragon decided to debut him in Episode 3, we couldn't just not talk about him, could we? So, without further ado, this is Seasmoke's Origins Explored. Oh, and this is your spoiler warning because there are going to be a lot of them. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Etymology, birthplace, and early years. Dragons in the world of George R.R. Martin are named in accordance with 2 traditions. They are either given names that correspond with the mysterious gods of Old Valyria, or they are given names based on their physical features/personal characteristics. Every dragon that we have spoken about on this channel so far, go watch those videos to know more about them, has been named following the former tradition. By that metric, Seasmoke is the first dragon that we're going to be talking about who has a name that is based on his physical characteristics and purported stealth abilities. Seasmoke is described as a majestic, pale silver-gray dragon in every account that discusses his appearance. And yes, Seasmoke is going to be called a male dragon in this video, because he was never observed to have lain an egg in his lifetime. For more on dragon gender studies, we suggest you go watch our video on Cyrax. Seasmoke was named after the fact that when he would fly out into the skies of Blackwater Rush before the crack of dawn, his coloring would essentially hide him within the mists, blurring him with the proverbial sea smoke. Hence, Seasmoke's name derives from both his physical characteristics and his stealthy appearance, which would allow him to fly mostly undetected under the cover of fog if there were 0 ships around. While figuring out why Seasmoke was given this name isn't that difficult, what is difficult is determining when he was born, because apart from the single sentence that says Laenor Velaryon had bonded with but not flown Seasmoke by 101 AC, we do not know anything about his birth, but we can make educated guesses. It is said that Laenor had already bonded with Seasmoke by the time he was 7 years old, but was yet to ride him. There could be multiple reasons behind why Laenor had not ridden Seasmoke, but we think it can be boiled down to 2 major ones. 1. Laenor was not of an age where he should have been riding a pony, much less a dragon. 2. Seasmoke was too small to ride at that point in time. First, let's address Laenor's age. It's true that at the age of 7, no child will be able to pull off successfully mounting a dragon and flying around an island with it. But in George R.R. Martin's world, children are often the ones who pull off insane acts of courage or madness, depending on your definition. While Arya Stark was a woman grown in the Game of Thrones TV show by the time she returned to Westeros in Martin's original work, she is 11, and we're just going to let that fact sink in. A few episodes down the road in House of the Dragon, you're going to see 4 kids, all below Arya's age, engage in a tussle that will definitely seem both courageous and crazy. So while Laenor's age might be a contributing factor in him not having ridden Seasmoke, we think the variable that holds more weight age is the age of Seasmoke himself. The tradition of placing a dragon egg in the cradle of a Targaryen babe began when Dowager Queen Alyssa Velaryon placed the eggs of Vermithor and Silverwing in the cradle of Jaehaerys and Alysanne, respectively. The old king and his good queen would follow in their mother's footsteps with their own children, and by the time Viserys became king, it was a royal custom to place dragon eggs in the cradles of newborn Targaryens. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, aka the Queen Who Never Was, married into House Velaryon at a time when she was one of the frontrunners to become Jaehaerys' heir. at least in Alysanne's mind. Rhaenys was the eldest daughter of Jaehaerys' eldest living child, which means she would technically have inherited the Iron Throne if other Westerosi houses followed laws of inheritance similar to their Dornish counterparts, or even the Valyrians, who seem to have also practiced a form of gender-neutral politics in their freehold. But because of the customs and traditions of inheritance in all other parts of Westeros, and King Jaehaerys' obsession with naming a male heir, Prince Baelon Targaryen was named the heir to the Iron Throne. Though Rhaenys had been passed over, she was not without support, and houses Velaryon and Baratheon stood behind her throughout King Jaehaerys and Viserys' reigns. In fact, at the Great Council of 101 AC, it was Laenor Velaryon who was competing with Viserys, not Rhaenys herself. Now, because Laenor was considered to be the true heir by his own mother, who herself was a Targaryen princess, ask yourselves this question. How likely is it that Rhaenys placed a dragon's egg in Laenor's cradle? We think it's very likely that this happened based off of the way Laenor's dragon bond with Seasmoke is described. It is said that Seasmoke was Laenor's pride and passion, which implies that their relationship ran very deep. Now, while it is possible to establish a bond with a dragon that has already had a rider or riders in the past, it is much more favorable to bond with a fresh hatchling, as there is less of a chance that they will not obey you. Dragons are willful creatures, and you can never truly tame them unless you bond with them. Laenor Velaryon could have received a dragon's egg in his cradle, which then hatched into Seasmoke, and it is possible that Seasmoke was not big enough or trained enough to let Laenor fly on his back by the time both of them had turned 7. This would potentially make Driftmark Seasmoke's birthplace, making him the first and only dragon to have been born at the island of the Lords of the Tides. But there is another possibility, and that is that Laenor found Seasmoke at one of the hatcheries owned by House Targaryen. Though Laenor was born on Driftmark, we don't know where he got his egg from because Driftmark isn't exactly known for housing dragons. It is more of a hunting ground for them. It is possible that Princess Rhaenys gave him the dragon egg using her influence as a royal and a presumptive heir besides, but it is also possible that Laenor found Seasmoke in a hatchery at Dragonstone. By the time Laenor's elder sister was born, Lord Corlys Velaryon had already quit the small council and returned to Driftmark and his seat High Tide. During his residency there from 92 AC to 101 AC, Prince Baelon served as the Prince of Dragonstone, and so it was unlikely that the Sea Snake and his dragon wife visited the island fortress during that period. But when Baelon died in 101 AC, Jaehaerys directly moved to call the Great Council. We are never told who held Dragonstone at this point, so we can assume that it was simply under the Crown's jurisdiction. And we can also assume that Rhaenys took Laenor to Dragonstone's hatcheries and had him pick one of the new hatchlings from there. Why was it so damn important for Laenor to have a dragon egg, you ask? The reason is simple. It would project legitimacy. Laenor's primary competition was Prince Viserys at the Great Council, and the 26-year-old was known to be more amiable than kingly. Viserys had been a dragon rider once, claiming the mighty Balerion at the age of 16, but the Black Dread was in the twilight of his life by then, and died a year after Viserys claimed him. And then, curiously enough, Viserys never took another dragon. Up until his reign, every Targaryen king had been a dragon rider. And though Viserys too was a dragon rider technically, he was dragonless upon his ascension to the throne. Laenor, on the other hand, would have had a young attractive dragon at his side if the timing of the council and his bonding with Seasmoke lined up perfectly. So the reason why Seasmoke was so important for Laenor's claim was because he would make Laenor seem more legitimate than Viserys. This is why figuring out his birthplace is so important to us, because it tells us exactly what his purpose to the story is. Where do you guys think he was born? Driftmark Isle, or Dragonstone, or somewhere else? Let us know in the comments. Keeping this debate aside for the moment, not much is said of Seasmoke's early years in Fire and Blood. We can assume that as Laenor grew, so did his dragon, and at some point Seasmoke became large enough for him to ride, which allowed Laenor to become a true dragon rider. But apart from that, Seasmoke and Laenor were an uneventful duo. Unlike Daemon and Caraxes, who were burning the stepstones to their heart's delight around the time the former duo were growing up, the only time Seasmoke saw any action was when he was ridden over to royal events at court and ridden back to Driftmark with the occasional visit to Dragonstone for Laenor to check up on his wife. Seasmoke's life becomes far more interesting in his later years. The the pride of one Velaryon and the redemption of another, Seasmoke in the Dance of the Dragons. Spoiler alert, but in 120 AC, Prince Consort Laenor Velaryon is killed at Spicetown and Seasmoke becomes riderless after spending at least 19 years with him. At his funeral, Seasmoke is one of the 9 dragons present on Driftmark, which caused observers to call the island the New Valyria at the moment. After Laenor's death, Seasmoke makes his lair in the Dragonmont at Dragonstone, like most riderless dragons went to do, where he remains for the next 9 years and grows enough to reach fighting size by the time the dance rolls around. Seasmoke was 3 times smaller than Vermithor, who in turn was smaller than Vhagar, but was far nimbler in the air than all of them combined, and had the definite speed and mobility advantage on them given the fact that he was still growing. At the beginning of the dance, Seasmoke is claimed by another Velaryon, albeit this one is of uncertain birth. The Blacks, Rhaenyra's side, start off the civil war with more dragons than the Greens, but their beasts are far smaller in size and not yet ready for battle, whereas the Greens possess 3 full-size battle-ready dragons plus Vhagar. So in order to tip the scales in their favor, the Blacks arrange an event called the Sowing, where they call forward people with Targaryen blood in their veins and any other valiant knights or mad commoners who would want to give claiming a dragon a try. Seasmoke ends up killing one of Rhaenyra's Queensguard members before he is claimed by a 15-year-old boy called Adam of Hull. Well, technically, Adam Waters, because as it turns out, Adam is a bastard son of Laenor Velaryon himself, allegedly of course. There are rumors that call him Corlys' sons instead, but this is not a video about Adam, so we'll save those for when we make one of him. Adam is the first person to successfully claim a dragon during the Sowing, and he is legitimized by Queen Rhaenyra after Lord Corlys petitions her to do so, making him the second official Velaryon rider of Seasmoke. Out of all the dragon seats that claimed a dragon during the Sowing, Adam was the one most loyal to Rhaenyra's cause, but the taint of bastardy is not one that is washed away so easily, even with a royal decree. Just ask Jon Snow, who you will be reminded of a lot when Adam eventually finds his way onto House of the Dragon. Seasmoke fights for Rhaenyra at the Battle of the Gullet and again at King's Landing, and becomes one of her primary weapons to defend her forces against the advancing Greens. But after suffering a betrayal from some of her less than savory allies, she grows paranoid and goes after Adam. He manages to escape with Seasmoke in the nick of time, but instead of fleeing the continent, which would have been the logical choice for most of us, Adam decides to prove that not all bastards need to be treacherous, even though they were born of lust and were considered sinful. After escaping from Queen Rhaenyra's paranoid grasp, Sir Adam Velaryon takes his pale silver-gray steed to several castles all across the Riverlands. He assembles a sizable army all by himself within a few days, and takes said army to fight in a battle that follows one of the bloodiest and most horrifying acts of atrocity ever committed in Westerosi history. If you guys thought the Dothraki sacking from Season 1 of Game of Thrones was disturbing, then just wait and watch, because House of the Dragon is going to easily outdo them as the late stages of the dance draw closer. Though Seasmoke had already fought in 2 battles so far, this would turn out to be the one that defines his legacy. Sir Adam descends upon the Green forces with 4,000 snapping piranhas at his back, and Seasmoke's flames claim the life of one of King Aegon's siblings, striking a direct blow at the royal family that was opposing his queen's claim. Perhaps more interesting is the fact that Seasmoke not only shows us how dragons fight humans and each other, he also possibly shows us how dragons mate. During said battle, Seasmoke and Adam end up having to fight a she-dragon, but the observers of this dragon fight said later that it looked more like a mating dance than an actual battle. This is because, although dragons were losing flames upon one another, they were not exactly making direct hits, and later would join up to fight another, far larger dragon, who was roused from his sleep and started bathing everyone in his bronze fury. Seasmoke and his rider would lay down their lives in the line of duty, even though their queen no longer trusted them. When Sir Adam was buried, the engraving on his tomb was a single word that exemplified his and Seasmoke's role in the Dance of the Dragons. That word was loyal. Having said that, whatever we've said so far holds true for Fire and Blood, but will also hold true for House of the Dragon, but not entirely, because for starters, Seasmoke has already been ridden to battle in the HBO series. Pride, passion, and playing at war. Seasmoke in House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon has significantly truncated the timeline of the events described in Fire and Blood. so it is only natural that there are going to be a lot of differences between the book and its adaptation. What is surprising is the fact that some of these substantial changes have also been made to the way Seasmoke is being incorporated into the story. In Fire and Blood, Prince Daemon and Lord Corlys fight their war without any written record of Laenor also having participated. Yet in House of the Dragon Episode 3, we saw Laenor in the thick of things alongside his father and his uncle. We also saw that not only was Seasmoke big enough to ride, he was big enough to fight, as he was actively taking part in the war for the Stepstones, and became the deciding factor for Daemon's victory at the end of the episode. This makes sense according to the timeline of the book and the show, because the latter is set in around 113 to 115 AC, and according to the trends described in the former, Seasmoke should have been battle-sized by then. But the fact that Laenor is even there is a deviation, because by all accounts, he was more interested in flying than fighting. Sure, it is true that Laenor would often surround himself with knights and squires, but the reason behind that is far more obscene than simply being battle-hungry and bloodthirsty. We don't know anything about Laenor Velaryon from Fire and Blood because he isn't a Targaryen, and that book is meant to be a history of Targaryen kings. So the showrunners have taken liberty with Laenor's characterization, yes, but they have also ensured not to lose any of Seasmoke's majestic beauty when bringing him alive on screen. You can only see it for a split second, but Seasmoke is gleaming like silver when Laenor rides him into battle, and we cannot wait to see the cinematic treat that is going to be him riding Seasmoke through the sea smoke. It is also going to be interesting to see when the interactions between Seasmoke and Syrax, because judging from all the trailers we've seen so far, Laenor is about to get the coldest of cold shoulders in his marriage to Rhaenyra, and as we know by now, dragons react to their riders' feelings and express their own in accordance to them. Seasmoke is the third dragon that House of the Dragon has shown us, and is also one who will stay with us until the final stages of the series. He is one you should definitely keep an eye on, because he will be involved in one of the most violent dragon-on-dragon conflicts since the Battle Beneath the God's Eye, where Maegor the Cruel and Velaryon made short and brutal work of King Aenys' son and his dragon Quicksilver, because 1. There are going to be a lot more dragons involved, and 2. There will be a lot more fire and blood as a consequence. And more than that, Seasmoke will also serve as a reminder of the fact that the Targaryens aren't the only ones who own dragons at the height of their rule in Westeros. It is often said that the blood of the dragon sticks close to its family members to keep bloodlines pure, but to also retain dragon riding abilities, keeping things within the family. Seasmoke is the prime example of the fact that being a Targaryen isn't what makes you a dragon rider. It is in fact the blood of the dragon that matters most. The legacy of Seasmoke in Fire and Blood and House of the Dragon. Seasmoke is a unique dragon in that his legacy is not tied as closely to House Targaryen as literally every other dragon that we have heard of in our lives. Most dragons that lived in Westeros have had Targaryen riders as a general rule. Some of them have allowed others to mount their backs after having had a previous Targaryen rider, but the fact is that if there was a dragon in existence, a Targaryen had most likely ridden it at one point in their lives, unless it was one of the wild dragons that reside in the Dragonmont. Even Laenor Velaryon's Mount Vhagar had the honor of being the steed of the Dragon Queen Visenya, who helped Aegon with his conquest and running his 7 kingdoms. Seasmoke is the only dragon we have heard of so far who has had an exclusive relationship with House Velaryon. His coloring reminds you of the misty high seas, and both his riders wave the seahorse banner in battle. While Laenor had Targaryen blood in him through Rhaenys, the dubious nature of Adam's parentage makes it hard to ascertain just why he was able to bond with Seasmoke. But bond with him he did, and together they proved to the realm that not all bastards are traitors and turncloaks. At the height of their power in Westeros, House Velaryon's boasts were backed up by their pale silver-gray dragon, and they never saw his like ever again. It is possible that one of the skulls in the Targaryen throne room following the Civil War belongs to Seasmoke, as we are never told what happens to his skull after it's detached from his body, but his bones still linger around that scorched and sacked city, serving as an eternal reminder of both the horrors that took place there and the valor of the Seasmoke, who was ridden by the House of the Sea Snake. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.